for joining our session here at Ignite, our session about developing in the cloud with Microsoft DevBox and Azure deployment environments. I'm Anthony Cangelosi. I'm the Group Product Manager for our Developer Productivity Services team in Developer Division.
So I'm Sagar Lankala. I'm a Senior Product Manager on the Developer Productivity Services team.
We are excited to talk to you about some of the challenges we've seen our developers facing every day. Sorry, we're not excited about the challenges, but we're inspired by how that's helped us reimagine what it's like for a developer to interact with their development and test environments. Your developers are facing some really unique challenges working with modern development and test environments that are affecting their developer velocity. Accelerating the developer experience can mean real value for you and your customers by creating ways for developers to be able to self-serve and eliminate the toil of working in these modern environments. And just as importantly, of how you can give your developers the flexibility they need is setting the guardrails and the controls to be able to manage that within your organization. Now let's start with some of the challenges we see developers facing building modern applications. One of the areas we found teams and enterprises dealing with a surprising amount of toil was onboarding to a new code base for new developers. Across different industries, we heard it was about the same. It takes upwards of about a week to get a new environment up and running to the point that you can build and run your code. And several weeks more when you start to talk about the application infrastructure that you need to deploy and test that application. Now, when we asked some of our developers within Microsoft themselves, in Azure, in Office, in Bing, we heard some of the same thing. So you might be asking, what does it really take to clone a repository? Well, it's this complicated. Much of the process and the time is spent waiting for resources, waiting to find out what's wrong with that wiki that's never been updated but is there as a source of truth. And it's not just affecting your new hires. You have developers that are collaborating across projects, moving between teams. You have vendors that are onboarding and offboarding to help support and accelerate your work. Now, all this complexity leads to a lot of unnatural behaviors. We've come to automate app deployment. We've come to treat our servers like commodities. Yet our developers treat these really complex local development environments like pets, protecting them, making sure that they're never hurt or damaged, because anything that happens to them affects our flow and our productivity. Now, these obstacles that developers are facing go beyond just setting up a dev environment. You deal with conflicting changes that can poison your workstation and leave your developers spending hours recovering from that environment. Just read about the 9 circles of Python dependency hell that you have to deal with on Medium. You have lagging performance that comes from longer hardware refresh cycles that keep getting longer and longer, adding extra strain to the development workflow. These challenges only get more complex when we add in our app infrastructure, with developers waiting weeks to be able to get those environments set up and constantly submitting new tickets to get them refreshed and new resources added. Now, tackling these obstacles that your developers are facing can be a challenge while still trying to get the right balance for your organizational needs to be able to maintain a secure and a compliant environment. Think about the risk that comes with giving these developers a VM that is left with an open port, or the customer database that gets exposed as a public endpoint. Think about the compliance requirements that you have in your industry, like the financials industry, that has a requirement to re-image developer workstations every few weeks. Or the budget overruns that might come from letting an automated process provision resources in a loop and run haywire. That's what led us to introduce 2 of Microsoft's newest developer services. These are Microsoft DevBox and Azure deployment environments. They're specifically designed to deliver the flexibility that developers need to be able to self-serve on-demand developer workstations and their app infrastructure. All of these dev and test environments are organized through projects and standardized and templatized so that new team members can come on and rapidly onboard without having to worry about the manual work of setting up and maintaining these environments. And finally, they give you the controls that you need to be able to give developers the flexibility they're looking for while still applying guardrails and controls through a shared development center that apply your policies and your security centrally in one place. Now let's start looking at some of the challenges that your developers might face with some of the modern applications they face today. So here's the eShop on Web reference application. You may have seen it before. It's a sample we've had around for a while. It's a relatively simple e-commerce app, but it has a ton of services you need to load up and run and build to get this app running. Not to mention the numerous developer tools that you need to configure and set up and install, as well as the source code and everything onto your machine before you get it working. That's where DevBox gives your devs the ability to create the developer workstations they need for these kind of apps that are ready to code with all the tools that they need, even the source code, configuration, and performance caches that let your devs focus on the code that only they can write instead of the mundane steps of kind of maintaining and updating these machines. All right, so the developer journey in Microsoft DevBox for your developers start here in the developer portal. Here I've got access to all the dev boxes I've already created, and as a new developer, I can create a new dev box. So let's create one now while we're here. Now, dev boxes, as I mentioned, are organized by projects, and projects are assigned to users. So these are the projects that I have access to, and they're different for each member of our team. Here I have the eShop project that we've set up for this particular demo. And already you're starting to see some of the cost controls that come into play. I already have 2 of my 5 allocated available dev boxes created in this particular project. Now, when you create a new dev box, there are a set of different dev box pools. These are the configurations of the dev box the developer is going to create. It has the base image that's going to get provisioned onto that developer workstation. These images are pre-built with the tools they need for different workloads or different tasks on a team. So we have a front-load image here, front-load developer, and a full-stack developer. It also defines the SKU, or the size of VM that you want to apply for this particular developer. So you can vary how much horsepower you give to different tasks on your team. And then finally, it attaches a network connection, both to put that network as close geographically to your developer for low latency, fast performance, as well as to be able to control the security boundary of what a developer in that workstation has access to. Now, finally, every dev box supports hibernation, which means that you can stop these workstations on a schedule when they're not being used, and when they're not being used without interrupting your developer's workflow. They can resume those workstations the same way you close the lid of a laptop. Now, let's create this here. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes for a dev box to provision and create and be up and running and connect. So rather than make you sit here and wait for that, I'm going to connect to one that I've already created a few minutes ago in that same eShop project. Now, I can connect to these dev boxes both from within our developer portal here, as well as using the new Windows app that was announced earlier at Ignite that works with all of cloud PCs. It's using and enrolled into my AAD domain, and so you're seeing that Windows Hello here is using my face to authenticate me. And that's because the dev boxes, when they're provisioned and created, are joined into your domain. Your conditional access policies are applied for your dev boxes. They're also enrolled into Intune, so all of your device management policies are applied as well. If you have compliant device policies that ensure that the devices connecting to your workstations are up-to-date, patched, and secure, those flow through and are applied before you connect to any dev box that's available. Now, here I'm connected into a dev box. And let me just minimize that screen that was up. This is a full Windows Development Client workstation. Anything that I can run on Windows, I can run on a dev box. Now, this particular dev box is already pre-built with a set of tools using a base image that we're really excited about. This base image is an image that was created by Docker in collaboration with us. And it has both the family of Visual Studio tools on it, as well as Docker Desktop loaded onto this image. And so it gives you everything you need from a ready to start to build cloud-native applications without having to customize and build these images yourself. Now, we're really excited about this collaboration, about how it accelerates that process. We've also taken that image and used another feature within DevBox, which allows you to integrate a compute gallery. So we build our own custom images on top of that base that start to add more value for our developers to make this truly ready to code. So if I come here, for example, and I go to File Explorer, get my keyboard. On this machine, we have a source directory, and we have our source code already loaded onto this machine. Further, when I load up Visual Studio that came from the image that we've loaded, we've taken advantage of another feature that's exclusive to DevBox and Visual Studio. That feature is called pre-populated cache. And the way that works is it allows you, when you're provisioning these images, to pre-generate all the caches that you need for this IDE to be able to load that specific solution. So when the developer comes to this workstation, everything that the IDE needed to warm up the machine, to understand the code, language model, language services, PDBs, everything it needs to run and debug is already preloaded and ready so that when the user loads up their solution, it's nearly instantaneous. There's little to no delay in solution load. Now, when we look at the scale of projects like the Chromium, we can reduce that by as much as 70% of the load time for some of the largest applications in the world. I come in and I can start searching code. I can move and search around and get to our new code search experience. All of that is instantaneous within the IDE because we've preloaded all of that cache for the developer, and we build that every day. Now, this is a ready-to-code developer workstation, but it's not really ready to code for me. When I walk up to a workstation, and as any of us do, we have to start to configure it for how we're going to use that workstation, the custom tools we need, the configurations we need to set up. So I'll start by going over to the terminal here. And first thing, you can already start to see that one of the extensions I like to use in my terminal, OMIPosh, isn't loaded up on this machine yet. I'm going to need to install that. Not to mention, I need to set my Git configurations on this machine, and so I need to apply that so that this commits correctly into our source code repository. So instead of doing all that manually, I maintain a settings repository that I'm going to clone down. And this settings repository lets me automate some of the steps inside of setting up my machine. So let me go ahead and open that up in my editor. And let's take a look at what's inside of that settings repo. So here I have my main setup PS, and it's doing a lot of the steps that I do to set up my workstation. It's got my Git config settings there applied. It's using the new powerful Winget DSC integration that lets you set and configure windows through Winget. So here I have it setting up and configuring my dark theme as I set up my machines, because I prefer dark over light theme. It installs my extensions for me with my package manager and configures them. It can even set up the new dev drive to let me eke out every bit of performance of my workstation when I'm setting that up. And so that's where I'm really excited about the next set of features that we're integrating into DevBox. And that's the ability to be able to define customizations as code that you can load up and build as a part of your workstation. So let's take a look at how that works. Let's start with a new file. Start with a DevBox YAML. Oh, excuse me. So to create this new file, and so DevBox has a new schema that it supports for setup tasks. And I've got a sample here, or a little snippet that I've created that has two tasks in it. The first one is cloning that samples repository onto my workstation. And the second one is a PowerShell task running that setup script that I have. I'm able to run each of these tasks either as a system while the machine is provisioning, or I can run them as a user so that it runs within my own identity. Now, the real power of tasks comes with how it's integrated into our Dev Center. So if I come back up to the command prompt here, I'm going to use list available tasks. And this is actually going to query my Dev Center. It's going to look at a catalog that's storing all the individual tasks that have been created by my platform engineering team for me as a developer. So here you see I have git clone as one of those tasks. My PowerShell is available, some package managers. And then I also have some custom tasks that have been built by my platform engineering team. So here I've got this download universal or ADO packages. This presumably downloads all the packages that I can get onto my machine. I can paste the sample of that task, format it correctly so that my YAML doesn't fail, and off to the races. Now I have one more task that I can pull from my catalog and immediately use in constructing my DevBox. But not only can you add your own custom tasks into the catalog, you can curate this to have only the tasks that you want. So if you have scenarios where you need to secure and constrain what a developer can do, but you want to give some flexibility, you can remove some of these tasks. Say, for example, remove the PowerShell task and only allow certain predefined tasks that you build that still provide some flexibility for your developer workflow. From here, I can save that task. And then we're going to come back over to that start of the journey in the developer portal. This time, when I create a new DevBox, oh, my feature flag wasn't there, so we're going to load that back up. And so this is a preview feature that's only available private preview right now, but I'll give you a link shortly to sign up for it. But when I create a new DevBox here, clear that out. Now I can add a customization into the creation of my dev box. So that dev box YAML I created, I can load that up so that when I create this dev box for my eShop project, all of those configurations are run as part of constructing my dev box. So now I can give it a custom name, custom dev Bob, and create. And so that's going to go off and create my dev box and then execute each of those tasks and the instructions for me before giving me my dev box in a truly personalized and ready to run form. We'll be updating the user experiences pretty early, but we'll actually be able to save that and store that with your profile so you can run that every single time. Now, with that taking a few minutes to run, I'm going to connect to another dev box that I have already here. Let me back out of this and start from this machine. And so this is the same eShop dev box, but this time has been run with that set of customization scripts on it. Those scripts, again, hello? Yes, hello? Hello, Windows. There we go. Those same scripts have been run on it. So when I start up this workstation, it should be personalized with all of those settings that I'm looking for in the way that I want my personal dev box set up. So already you can probably see the dark theme is applied in this particular dev box. It's still the same image with my Docker tools and Visual Studio and everything loaded, but it's got all of those customizations running on here. So if I come to the File Explorer and we zoom in a little bit, we can see over here that a new dev drive has been added. Now, if you haven't heard of dev drive, this is a new feature in Windows that is super powerful for your developers. Dev drive lets you eke out every bit of performance out of the file system because it uses a different file system format called REFS. And that file system is really optimized for read and write operations, which makes it awesome for build, for debugging, for compiling. All those scenarios that developers work in and out of in their inner loop of development are super fast in a dev drive. And so now I can start to move my code over to this space and even make it a part of the base image that we deploy and run. Not only that, but if I come over to my terminal here, I've got a terminal window that's personalized for me that has all the extensions that I want there. I've got my OhmyPosh extensions, and if I move into my repository here, you can see that I get the pretty beautiful Git integration that OhmyPosh gives me at the terminal. Now, if you haven't gathered, configuration and automation is key to where we're going with the DevBox experience. And so we wanted to make sure that that was available throughout the developer workflow. So we started to look at the Visual Studio experience as well, and we've started to add some more features there that we're excited as well. So let me go over to my Visual Studio folder here, and I'm going to type out a settings file. So Visual Studio 17.9 has just enabled the ability for you to be able to apply and configure settings for the IDE and store them and save them and load them from any location on your disk. This allows me to have a portable settings definition that I can set up whenever I move to a new workstation. So here, for example, I am setting my preferred color theme, bubblegum pink. That's part of our new UI refresh that you can apply, one of our new tints that we have available. I have a layout I prefer. I like vertical tabs along the left side, gives me more space. And I have some of the new productivity features that are latest and greatest inside of Visual Studio loaded. I've got brace colorization, sticky scroll, and more all defined so that when I start up my IDE, it is personalized the way that I want to work. So let's load up DevEnv here and get that going. And so from within Visual Studio, if I continue without code just to get a feel of the beauty of the IDE, here's our new bubblegum pink theme and tint that's available that you can pick if you prefer it. And the IDE carries all of that personal settings with you, vertical tabs and more. Now, this setting may or may not be right for you. And certainly in a group setting, there might be a different preference that's more applicable to a broader audience. And so Visual Studio's unified settings has the ability to set scopes. So you can have your own personal user settings as well as project-specific or repo-specific settings. That's where if I come over here and I come over to my recent files, I'm going to load up that eShop on Web solution. And this solution has inside of it a settings file. This settings file is defining its own setting, the same format as well before, but this time setting Moonlight Glow. And so whenever a project loads, we're inspecting the solution in the repository to see if it has its own custom settings, letting a team or a group apply unique settings that need to be there for the productivity or for the work on that particular project. So that's just the beginning of where we're going with settings. We have a lot more that's available. 17.9 has also introduced the ability to define and install Visual Studio extensions through config as code, components, and even more. So there's a lot, pretty much everything you can do to set up a developer workstation. Now, the last thing I want to come back to is kind of the productivity that you get and the power from a developer workstation. All of the power is in the cloud coming from that remote environment. which means that you can now really change what the total cost is of a developer workstation. Everything you've seen here from this developer workflow was run from within inside of this Surface Go 4. This was a device that's running all of the demo you just saw. Actually, I think I may have messed things up for the guys in the back because I just unplugged it from them. It is truly real. It is where I'm running the demo. So you can bring down a low-cost, cost-efficient device for your development workflow and still access the power of the cloud for any developer on your team. If we can switch back to the slides. Sorry for catching you guys off guard in the back. So in this demo, you saw we created a dev box that had all of the tools that I needed to build the eShop application. It's gotten a lot easier now that we have pre-built images from Docker they're making those available with Docker Desktop included. And we're really excited about this collaboration that we have with them, helping developers using DevBox and Docker together to build cloud-native applications. These images will be available shortly, later this month, on the Azure Marketplace that you can integrate into your dev boxes. You also saw how simple configurations in code can be used to customize your dev box in infinite ways and automate that last mile of a dev box setup to really personalize a dev box for you or for your team. This feature is still in private preview for a little bit longer, but we have a sign up where you can join the private preview and get access to it early if you'd like, and check it out and see if it works for your team and your org. And finally, Visual Studio is continuing to deepen its integration with DevBox through new features like the automated settings that you saw and configuration as code for extensions and settings, as well as the exclusive features that you saw around pre-provisioning or pre-populating caches in the IDE that you can generate those caches for faster performance. Now, seeing is believing. So in partnership with GigaOM, we've been researching the gains that DevBox brings to onboarding developer performance and developer experiences, with the ready-to-code environments that go from days down to minutes, and the time to a productive IDE reducing from up to 70%. This research is still in progress, and you'll see it published soon. So thank you. Now, Sagar, why don't you tell them a little bit about deploying and testing applications with Azure deployment environments?
Thanks, Anthony. So now we all know that there's a lot more to building an application than just configuring all the tools and SDKs that we need on our own personal dev box. An engineering system is more than a developer's machine and specifically involves CI/CD pipelines and the application infrastructure that is required to deploy and run your applications. The cloud-native applications typically require a complex configuration of cloud resources. eShop application might seem like a very simple cloud-native application, but it runs on a complex set of infrastructure configuration. How complex? This complex. This represents the infrastructure configuration that is required to successfully deploy and run your eShop application. It consists of several databases, identities, app services, Key Vault, and monitoring services. In total, the eShop application requires 9 different Azure resources to successfully deploy and run. If I was a new developer joining the team and I had to set it up on my own, it would take several hours, if not days. And also, it might be pretty easy for me to make a mistake and open up a security loophole. More often than not, the enterprise that I work for might not want me to have this much control over the resources, and it's not exactly how I want to be spending my time. But thanks to Azure deployment environments, you as a developer can quickly spin up this app infrastructure using project-based templates, ensuring consistency, best practices, and security. It's all about providing on-demand secure environments while adhering to your software development lifecycle in a compliant and cost-efficient manner. Let's look at that experience as you as a developer will have when you are using Azure deployment environments. Now, let me go back to the same developer portal where Anthony started by creating a dev box. If we scroll just a little bit down, we'll be able to see deployment environments here. Dev portal is a central place where you as a developer will be able to get a machine where you write your code and a deployment environment where you will be able to deploy and run your code as well. So as a new developer joining the team, you can just select to create a new environment and provide some basic information that you're already familiar with, such as name for the environment, type of the environment that you would like to create, and then select an environment definition to create the environment. Now, you can also schedule an you can also schedule a deletion for this environment. So if I need this test environment only for 7 days, I can schedule an auto deletion date and time, and the service will take care of deleting this environment so that I need not worry about burning the budgets of my organization. Now, the experience in the developer portal is old news. We have shown you at Build as well. Since Build, we have been hard at work to optimize the developer experience for you and provide an end-to-end experience. With our new integrations with Azure Developer CLI, right from where you live, that is your IDE or the CLI, you'll be able to both create environments and deploy your app code. So let me first go to the terminal. It is a very simple experience. Let's see how simple it is. All you need to remember is AZD up. You can see that I'm already in the repository where my team is working on, that is eShop on web, and I'll just do eShop AZD up. This will and I'll select the type of environment that I want to create. I just want a personal environment that is private to me and not shared. So I'll select the dev full stack private environment type. Now this will package the entire application, create a new environment in Azure, and deploy the app code directly. All you had to do was AZD up. Very simple experience. This will take a bit of time for for the environment to be created. So in the interest of time, let me show you an environment that was created right before this demo. Once the environment is created, you will be able to see all the resources that are created as part of this environment. As you can see, for the eShop infrastructure, there is app services in there, Key Vault, and some SQL Server databases that from where this catalog of items is being sourced from. Once the deployment is done, I can also see an endpoint which I can access, and I'll be able to see my instance of the application running on a test environment that's private to me. Let me select that. We can see that I am able to access the endpoint, and the application code from the eShop application, the main eShop application, is running on a test environment very quickly and easily. Now, this is not something that you do on a daily basis. All day and every day, you will do some incremental changes, and you would like to test them before you commit your changes to your main branch. Right? So let's take a look at that experience. This is a holiday season. Let's consider a scenario where you as a developer on the eShop team have been asked to make some marketing changes related to announcing a Black Friday sale and offering 50% off on all items. To give us a head start, I've made some changes already, like updating the banner image for the application. I've also changed the prices for each of the items. So now, before I commit my code and create a pull request, I would want to test these changes. Again, a very simple experience. You can just go to VS Code, and with the extension that Azure Developer CLI has with VS Code, you can do AZD deploy, and this will package your entire application along with the changes, local changes that you have made, and deploy your changes directly into the test environment, into an existing test environment. So it's again, a very simple experience where you will be able to incrementally test your changes, identify and fix any issues that you might see before creating pull requests. This ability to create an environment, deploy your app code so quickly and easily will really help you avoid the lot of back and forth with the pull request reviewers and you'll be able to confidently commit your changes, create pull requests, and increase the velocity at which you are shipping innovations for your end users. Now, as we can see, the deploy operation has been completed. Let me now again click this endpoint, access this endpoint. Now I'll be able to see that the banner image has been changed, and my local changes where I reduce the prices by 50% I can see those changes working in a real-time production-like environment. I can see that everything is working well. The next natural step for me is to commit my changes and create a pull request. So with Azure deployment environments, you will also be able to automate your GitOps workflows. Based on some Git operations that you're performing on a daily basis, you can automatically create and delete environments so that they are just used when it's actually needed. So let me go ahead and create, I've already staged these changes as well. Let me go ahead and create a new branch and push these changes. So let me call it demo SL Black Friday. And I'll have a commit message in here. And I'll both commit and push my changes onto the repository. Now we can see that the changes are getting pushed. Now let's switch to the repository in which the entire team is working in. There's a GitHub repository, eShop on Web, where my entire team is working in, and I can see that the branch that I've just created is shown up here, and I'll be able to just compare and create a pull request out of this. Let me just do that. I would like to merge to the branch that my team is working in, and I will just select to create a pull request. Now, when I create this pull request, Azure deployment environments, again, with the integration with AZD, will be able to you can plug it in such a way that as soon as the pull request is created, this will automatically create an environment. When we go to the actions, we'll be able to see that this has kicked off creation of a new environment. And once that environment is created, even the environment is shared with your pull request reviewers. So that way, pull request reviewers are able to view the changes working in a real-time environment and provide meaningful feedback for you, and not just reviewing the code in blind. This will, again, enable and prevent a lot of back and forth between you and your pull request reviewers, so that you can focus on writing the code that only you can write, and increase the overall velocity of your development team. So let me show an environment that I've created because of it got created because of the pull request that I created yesterday. And once the environment is created, I'll be able to again see the website. So the pull request reviewers have access to it. So when I select that, I'll be able to see the same local changes that I had reflect in the pull request as well, so that even the pull request reviewers will be able to make these changes, look at these changes, and provide feedback to the pull requests. So as soon as these environments live only for the time when they are needed. So once the pull request is merged, this will automatically kick off deletion of an environment as well. So that way, the environments are actually living in only for the time when they are needed, enabling you to increase the velocity at which you can ship your applications and with higher quality. Now, what we have seen is, as a developer, you are able to create an environment on your own, deploy your app code onto the environment, and also perform some automations in such a way that these environments are automatically created and deleted based on some Git operations that you do on a day-to-day basis. Today, I'm thrilled to announce that the integration between Azure deployment environments and Azure Developer CLI is publicly available. This integration means that AZD now understands the scope and permissions that you, as a developer, have in Azure deployment environments, and AZD recognizes the types of environments that are configured in deployment environments, so that you will be able to directly use AZD to both create a new environment and deploy your app code onto that environment. With this, with this integration, as a developer, you can deploy your app code changes and also automate the creation and deletion of environments in your GitOps workflows. We are aligning these powerful tools so that to ensure that no matter what the experience that we are providing, like the developer portal or the CLI or the IDE, you are able to have the same experience for creating and deploying your app code onto the test environments. Until now, until now, we talked about the experience of developers getting a machine in the cloud, which is pre-configured with everything that they need, and a deployment environment where they'll be able to deploy and test their changes. Now let's shift gears and talk about how you, as a platform engineer or an IT administrator, can use these complementary services to empower your developers to self-serve these dev boxes and deployment environments within the guardrails that you have configured for your team. As Anthony talked about it earlier, developers and platform engineers have a slightly different set of goals, right? Let's focus on the goals that you, as a platform engineer, have for your team. And those are related to specifically security and governance, standardization, and cost management. We believe that platform engineering is an approach to achieve these goals. Platform engineering is an evolution of DevOps practices that provides developers with self-service access to the infrastructure they need within the guardrails set by the central IT teams. Both Microsoft DevBox and Azure deployment environments are services that act as building blocks for you to implement platform engineering in your organization. There are 3 key motions that will help you implement platform engineering: start right, stay right, and the self-service within guardrails. Start right focuses on equipping your developers with self-service tools, enabling them to kickstart their projects quickly while adhering to your company's best practices defined through templates and policies. With DevBox, you can provide curated set of images and tools, as Anthony showed, so that the developers will be able to customize their DevBox. With deployment environments, you'll be able to provide curated set of infrastructure as code templates that your developers can use to directly create an environment in Azure. Now, stay right is all about ensuring that you are able to you're able to monitor and govern the infrastructure that is being created by the development teams. And also, cost management is important. Like, these resources are being created in the cloud. You would want to ensure that the costs live within stay within the budgets that have been assigned for the organization. Both Microsoft DevBox and Azure deployment environments will help you track and monitor the resources that are being created by the engineering teams, and also helps ensure these resources are being created in the right set of subscriptions and enforce the right set of policies based on the type of environment that is being created and the development team. Finally, self-service within guardrails. One of the foundational principles of DevBox and ADE is to empower developers quickly and easily get the infrastructure that they need, but within the boundaries and guardrails that have been configured by the platform engineering teams. And you, as a platform engineer, will have a seamless experience configuring these guardrails in both the services. Let's quickly take a look at the experience that you, as a platform engineering team, had when you're setting up the developers in the eShop project self-serve their own dev boxes and deployment environments. This is an Azure portal that you all are aware of. So there are a lot of common components between Microsoft DevBox and Azure deployment environments. So the customer who's using both the services can leverage these common components. Dev Center is a collection of different projects that you would like to manage together. And project is where the dev team lives. So projects will inherit some of the configuration that is set up at the Dev Center level, and you'll be able to provide project-specific settings as well. The developer was working in the eShop project. So let's first take a look at the environments that were getting created. There were a number of environments that are created. So as a platform engineer, you'll be able to track and manage all of these environments that are being created by the engineering teams. You can see the different types of environments that the developers are creating, and also you'll be able to see if there are any recommendations that are being shown by Azure Advisor. So that way you'll be able to go fix any of the security alerts and so on that Azure Advisor is recommending you to fix. Also, there's a deep integration with Azure Cost Management. So per environment, you'll be able to track and manage the costs and take advantage of all the cost management capabilities for managing the costs for these environments. Now, to configure Azure deployment environments for this specific project, all you have to do is to configure the different types of environments your development teams can create. Now, let's try adding a new environment type and see what are the configurations Azure deployment environments provides for you. You can select among some of the standard nomenclature for different types of environments that are allowed for your organization. And you'll be able to map a subscription in which all the environments and the corresponding resources get created. So let me select, there's a dev environment, so let me select a subscription that's relevant for it. So now whenever a developer creates an environment, the service ensures that all the resources are created behind the scenes in this subscription, and all the policies that are configured for the subscription and management group are automatically applied. Second, you can configure the identity using which these deployments are performed. So the developer need not have any access to the subscription, that is the Conteso Inc. Dev subscription here. Whenever a developer is selecting to create an environment, we use managed identities to perform deployment on behalf of the developer. And also, this managed identity is specific to this environment type and to this project. So that way, it is more secure and isolated as well. Additionally, you'll be able to configure what is the set of permissions that will be granted to the developers once the environment is created. You can give them a contributor permission if there are any data plane related permissions. So that is something that you can grant as well. So when an environment is created, the service, deployment environment service, automatically assigns these permissions for the developer. You have an additional capability to assign more permissions for the rest of the team. You can use AAD groups or additional directly the user ID and assign them additional permissions as well. And finally, you can assign tags that will be assigned to all the resources that are created as part of the environment. So that way, you can continue to use the tools that you're using and you leverage tags to track these resources. Now, one last functionality that you need to configure for deployment environments is to provide this infrastructure as code templates directly. So we support this capability for catalogs where you will be able to directly store your infrastructure as code templates in your source control repository and attach that repository as a catalog in the service. As soon as you attach the repository, we'll scan through that repository, identify the infrastructure as code templates, and make them available for the development teams to use. This storing the templates in the source control repository encourages inner sourcing of templates as well from your development teams, and that is a great thing about this capability. Now, if we quickly go back to the project, for configuring the DevBox pools, all you have to do is to configure the DevBox pool for the specific project. As you might have seen, when Anthony was creating a DevBox, he had access to 4 different pools. Now, let's take a scenario where a new data science team is joining, and the experience that you will have to provide DevBoxes for them. All you need to do is to provide a name for that pool. Let me just call it data science pool. And you'll be able to select DevBox definition. A DevBox definition is a combination of the queues, like the size of the DevBox, and the image that will be used when creating the DevBox. I see that there is a data science definition, which provides a very powerful DevBox, 32-core DevBox, and a 2 TB storage. That is something that I can select. And I can also select one of the network connections that I already have, or I can use the new Microsoft-hosted network as well, and configure a few controls and select to create a pool. So within minutes, you are able to now configure your project in such a way that the data science team is able to get self-serve their own dev boxes and get start and data science dev-boxes and start contributing to the project. This is much simpler compared to the experience that you have shipping powerful machines and waiting for days, if not weeks, for the data science team to start contributing to the project. So with DevBox, your life has been made so simple and easy, and at the same time, complying to your organizational policies. Today, I'm excited to announce a few new capabilities. Let's first start with DevBox. We are continuing to streamline the configuration and setup process for platform engineers to ensure that the DevBox experience is seamless. So today, I'm excited to announce the public preview of a new Quick Start template that provide new users and admins with a single-step DevBox deployment that helps create everything you need to get started with DevBox. We are also introducing Microsoft-hosted managed networks to simplify the entire network setup process and directly use them when configuring the DevBox pools for your development teams, as we have seen in the demo just now. DevBox managed networks are now generally available, and you can directly configure in the Azure portal. There are a couple of announcements that I would like to make for Azure deployment environments as well. Until now, leveraging ARM templates was the only way to define your environments in ADA. Starting today, you can use Bicep as well. You can sign up using the aka.ms link in here. Finally, also generally available is the scheduled auto delete for environments. To limit unnecessary costs, you can now configure a scheduled auto deletion of deployment, which empowers you to configure in ephemeral environments with the specific lifespan. This helps you widely roll out the service for large organizations, and so that a few forgotten environments can will not lead to significant costs. Finally, our vision is to empower developers and dev teams to get an entire engineering system in minutes. We have embarked on the journey with DevBox and Azure deployment environments. We believe the new capabilities that we announced today will help you roll out the DevBox and deployment environments in your organization and take advantage of these services. There are a few related sessions that we have. Right after this, there is a session that we are having on the ins and outs of deploying Microsoft DevBox inside Microsoft. Please join us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have in the expert booth that we have right next door. Thank you so much for joining us today.